with me turning my mic on. And then we're going to begin with watching a little video from one of my favorite movies, Shrek. So we're going to watch this clip and then we're going to talk about it.
Princess!
What are you doing?
Be still, chérie, for I am your savior, and I am rescuing you from this green beast. Hey, that's my princess. Go find your oil. Please, monster. Can't you see I'm a little busy here?
Look, pal, I don't know who you think you are.
Ah, of course I'll do that. Please let me introduce myself. Oh, merry man! Still for the rich and give to the needy.
Takes some percentage.
But I'm not greedy. I wish to pretty damsels, man, I'm good. Monsieur, take it down. I like it when fight in a sausage and made. What he's basically saying is he likes to get married. Oh, I don't know, in the bush, not the lady by the bush. That's bad. That's bad. When the beauty with the beast, it makes me awfully mad. I'll take my blade and ram it through your heart. Your eyes on your voice, 'cause I'm about to start.
Man, that was annoying.
So who was that supposed to be? The guy with the feather cap?
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood. Who's Robin Hood? That's his modus operandi, right? Steals from the rich and gives to the poor. How was he viewed by those who were in good standing during his time? The nobles. A thief, an outlaw, right? Not viewed very highly. And who was his enemy? Do you know that much about the story?
The Sheriff of Nottingham.
The Sheriff of Nottingham. Now, what was wrong with Sheriff of Nottingham? Why did he earn the disrespect of Robin Hood?
He was the bad guy. He was the greedy one that wanted to tax everybody so much.
Right, so he was a bad guy. He was taxing people unfairly, specifically people who were poor, right? And then Robin Hood steps in and saves the day by taking from the rich and giving to the poor who have been unjustly taxed, right? So that's the story. I want you to think about this story as we interpret our parable today. So Jesus tells a parable about a dishonest manager. Now, what you might not know about this manager, unless you look a little closely at the text, is that the manager was a slave. And he talks about his master, right? But he was a slave in a position of authority. He was given trust by the master because his job was, when the master was away, the manager, the slave manager, would look over the property, make sure that everything was being kept up, and then he would also be in charge of the rents. So he would manage as well the master's debts. And so the manager, the slave manager, for whatever reason, has been accused of dishonesty. He's been accused of squandering the property of his master. And we don't know if this is true or not, but if it was true, it probably meant that he was raising the rents so that he could increase his cut whenever the people would pay up. And since he's been accused, the consequences would be that he would be demoted from his position as manager and be given another position as a field laborer or doing hard labor somewhere on the master's property. Or he could be even kicked out of the master's household entirely and live on the streets and beg. And so we hear the manager, as he's been given this accusation and given time before he's going to be demoted, he says to himself, I don't want to do hard labor, and I don't want to beg on the streets, so he's going to do something else. So he puts into action a plan, and his plan is that he's going to go around to the various debtors of his master, and what does he do? What does he do with each debtor? He decreases their debts, and then he has them what? Pay up front, right? So how much do you owe? 100 of this, make it 50, and pay it now. What does this do? Why put this plan into action, right? Well, the reason is that he's doing two things, actually. One is he's making his master look generous because the manager represents his master. And so by reducing the debts, the master is the one who looks like he's reduced the debts. So he's, in other words, buttering up the master, making him look good. So maybe the master will be forgiven, right? And if that doesn't work, what else is he doing? Well, he's making all of these people who are debtors look favorably upon him because he's just reduced their debt. So if he should not be able to stay in his position or be kicked out of the master's household, maybe one of these debtors will take him in. So it's not exactly an upfront way of dealing with his problem, but it's clever, right? And how does his master react? Is he upset with this further dishonesty?
He said he was shrewd.
That's the weird part, right? Yeah, no, he's not. He says, oh, that was clever of you. You can stay in your position. I want you to think about this manager a little bit like the Robin Hood character, right? So in this particular little video, in the very beginning, he says, I take from the rich and I give to the needy. And then one of his merry men says, he takes a wee percentage. And then he says, but I'm not greedy, right? So the manager was taking more than a wee percentage, right? He got, perhaps, that's what he's been accused of. He got greedy. And then it backfired on him. And his position was on the line. So then he turned around and was generous, right? With the people that he'd been greedy towards. And won their favor, right? And the master also. So what does this mean for us, right? Well, it helps to think about who is the audience of this particular parable. If you remember last week, right at the very beginning of our reading from last week, the Pharisees and the scribes were bad-talking Jesus. Do you remember what their complaint was? It's a week ago, I know.
He eats with sinners.
He was eating with sinners! Jeez, Jesus. We're the people with status. You should be eating with us. Right? He was eating with sinners and with tax collectors. Who are tax collectors like? Perhaps this dishonest manager, right? So Jesus tells a bunch of tales then, after the scribes and Pharisees make this accusation or critique. And the first one he tells is about lost sheep. And then he tells another one about a lost coin. Those were the two that we heard last week. And then there's a third tale that he tells that we skip over in our lectionary at this point. And that tale is very familiar to many people. It's about a lost son, also known as the parable of the prodigal son. And in that story, if you recall, there's the younger son who squanders his dad's inheritance, right? And then is welcomed generously back into the household when he returns. And then there's the older son. How does the older son react in the parable? Do you remember? He's angry, upset, bitter almost, you might say. Not unlike the scribes and the Pharisees, right? They are bitter about this generosity that God is showing to sinners, tax collectors. And then Jesus tells this parable about the dishonest manager. And who was the dishonest manager, you might ask? It could be, one interpretation is the scribes and the Pharisees. So stay with me. So the scribes and the Pharisees are in some ways in authority, right? They're religious authorities. And they're responsible for teaching the people about God and modeling to the people how to follow God. And they haven't done such a good job at that. They've said one thing and done another, right? They talk about doing all these good things, and then they've been unfair to people who are in need. So they haven't been generous with God's blessings, in other words. So kind of like the manager, they've been increasing their own cut from God at the expense of people in need. Or like the sheriff of Nottingham, right? It's complicated. We're going to get there. So the scribes and the Pharisees are the dishonest manager. And Jesus is saying, all right, so I've called you out. I can see that you've increased your cut. What are you going to do about it? So what did the dishonest manager do in the tale? Remember? We just talked about it. What happened when he was accused? He cut the debts. That's right. Yep. He took action, right? He's like, all right, I got to change my ways if I want my future to be a good one. So Jesus is essentially saying to the scribes and the Pharisees, if If you don't change your ways, what's going to happen? When God's kingdom comes, will you be welcome? No, says Barb. No, Barb's decided they won't be welcome. That's the question, right? Could be no. So, what are you going to do about it? And Jesus' urging then would be generous instead of taking advantage, right? So kind of this choice between, are you going to be a Robin Hood who works on behalf of those who are needy, or are you going to be a sheriff of Nottingham who takes from those who are needy, right? So I want us to think about this parable. In Jesus' time, he was addressing the scribes and the Pharisees. Who should we be addressing this parable to in our times? Who are folks who have acted like sheriffs of Nottingham? Who have abused or taken advantage of those who are vulnerable or in need? Who's this?
Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff. I don't know who that is. Who's Bernie Madoff?
He was an investor, and he invested people's money.
Probably dating myself.
And he, it was all on paper, and he lost millions and millions and millions of dollars in people around the world. And aristocrats who, French aristocrat built over it, he lost fortune and
So he misused other people's money, essentially, for his own gain.
it was a Ponzi scheme.
A Ponzi scheme. All right.
It all into him.
Yes. Who else? Bernie Madoff. It was a very specific example. Who else might this parable be addressed to in our times? Politicians? How so?
Politicians that might not be 100% honest in what they're doing, they say they want their own personal gain and reasons so they will say which is
So politicians who are working for their own power, essentially, and are misleading others to gain power, right? And maybe making promises that then they don't follow through with. Sure, politicians. Who else?
Corporations.
Ooh, now we're getting weird. Car salesman. Uh-oh. Does anybody here can sell cars? How so?
You want to get a car and they think you're getting a good interest rate outside on something. If you look at that one at 4%, could have got 3, which is 4 on
Right.
warranty that don't keep on the
So they're giving you all this stuff that you don't need to raise the price.
interest rate.
Yep. So this would be the dishonest car salesman, right? There could be good ones. There could be, they might be out there. We got to give them a benefit. A couple, says April. So dishonest car salesman. Yeah, that's happened. That's happened.
Just con artists in general. I mean, there's a lot of them out there.
Con artists in general. How about those people who call you up, right?
Oh.
I know you all know about this. You tell me all the time. Tell me about one of these people who call you up. What did they say?
The IRS that calls you up.
IRS, I got one of those the other day. There's something wrong, you need to call us to give us your social security number. What else?
I knocked on your door. I just did your neighbor's yard or your neighbor's driveway. I have extra
Yeah.
paving. Would you like to come? Just say no. No, no, no.
Extra paving. So this is somebody who's knocking on your door, not calling you up. Who else? What do people say who call you up? How about the, hi grandma, how's that one go?
I'm stranded. I need some money.
I'm stranded, I need some money. Look, Terry does it. And you say, who are you again? Which grandson?
Or they call and say your grandson was in an accident.
Uh-huh.
He needs money in Mexico, and this is a woman near us. They even his name,
Even knew the grandson's name.
and he lives in San Diego, and it was not unlikely that he's in Mexico.
Hmm.
She lost thousands of dollars.
So somebody really got conned with this. Wow. Yeah. It does have victims, right? Mm-hmm. Who else? We talked about
The
con
police.
artists.
The police even call you for money.
The police call you for money.
You can't do that.
They do all
You
the
mean
time.
people on the phone who aren't really the police, right?
They call on the phone and say, give me and give me money.
Right. Don't do it, Sue says.
Pay by gift cards.
Mm-hmm. Don't pay by gift cards. So how might this parable be speaking to us? So we can think of all these people that it could have a good message for in our community, in our nation, who are taking advantage, right? How is this parable speaking to us? What's the overall message? Don't get suckered in! That's a very St. John's look. Yeah, don't get suckered in. All right, let's think about it this way.
Don't be like that.
Be honest in your dealings with people. That's another good lesson. Sure. Think about it this way too, okay? So the manager thought he was safeguarding his future. How did he think he was safeguarding his future?
By accumulating wealth.
By accumulating wealth, right? Dishonestly in this case. But then, what did it turn out to do to him? It's going to lose him his position. It's going to destroy his future. So what does he really need to do to safeguard his future?
You have to get that down to the races.
Worship God and not will. There we go. Real simple. How do we do this? We do it. We accumulate these things, right? We think they're going to help us out. Not always dishonestly. Most of us do it honestly. And yet the truth still is, where is our security found? Is it found in that retirement account? Savings? Where's our ultimate security found? In God. In God. All other ground is sinking sand. Absolutely, Barb. A beautiful image. In our New Testament reading, it says, Christ Jesus, himself human, gave his life as a ransom for all. Jesus was the ultimate Robin Hood. He gave everything, right? He didn't hold anything back, no percentages. All of it was given away for us. And that's where our security is found, in that incredible gift of grace, of forgiveness, of salvation. That's where we find our security. And that's the gift that we want to share, right? With others. So that they too can rest on that foundation. They too can stand on that rock. Because from that place, anything is possible. Everything is possible. Thanks be to God.